Well, the DGCA has said that the screening test in respect of the pilot in command indicated a result requiring confirmatory testing is what we are learning at this point in time. Atul Ranjan, my colleague, joins us on the broadcast to give us more details about this. Atul, the DGCA what we are hearing is that they have de-rostered both these pilots, but what's the latest when it comes to their checks and the random checks related to their drugs?
Well, as you know, the breaking news that right now we are having is that both the concerned pilots of the Air India 2379, which was flying from Phuket to Delhi on August 4th, both these pilots have been de-rostered by the DGCA, the aviation regulatory body in the country. Now, what we're also getting to understand is that DGCA has finally confirmed that the dope test of the pilot in command or the captain that has come positive, and therefore a secondary test, a follow-up test, is something which has been initiated. What the DGCA calls it a confirmatory test that has been initiated. Now, basically, confirmatory test is basically something which initially urine test is done, and post which, if the results do show positive indication, then a follow-up test is also done regarding another round of testing is basically done just to confirm if the initial result was indeed actually positive. So that doping test once more has been initiated for confirmation of the initial result that came out, which sort of shows that that the captain of the Air India flight indeed had psychotropic substances. He used those substances. Now that has been confirmed by the DGCA, which has released a statement right now, and that is what we are picking up right now. Now, obviously, it raises a question given the fact that both the pilots, in fact, have been de-rostered. So certainly, while the only pilot in command or the captain had tested positive for the dope, the second the pilot also has been de-rostered, which essentially indicates that the DGCA sort of is looking at the whole incident of the turbulence, and then the decision to not sort of divert the flight to a nearby airport as with different angles as well. Remember, in 2012, a similar incident happened when Delhi to Shanghai Air India flight was also also met mid-air turbulence, following which the flight was not diverted to any nearby location, in which 18 to 19 passengers were deeply injured. In that particular incident, DGCA grounded both the pilots concerned, and right now we are seeing the same happening here as well. Both the pilots have been de-rostered, and investigation has been initiated as we have reported in the past. The particular aircraft has been placed on the hangar. The audio voice recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, all of those have been taken in possession by the DGCA, and now the investigation is on.
All right, Atul, stay with us. Some more breaking news coming in. Well, both flight crew members have been taken off the roster by the DGCA, and this has been confirmed. We are also getting to know that confirmation tests mean that under aviation safety procedures, an initial urine test can be followed by confirmation testing. This may include a second test if required, a blood test, and psychoactive substances. The pilot's suspension comes amidst the ongoing probe into the turbulence that hit the flight. Atul, of course, the DGCA hell-bent and insistent on making sure that whoever was responsible for this turbulence is brought to books.
Yeah, well, apart from confirmatory test and the action that the DGCA has so far taken when it comes to de-rostering both the pilots, what also there's one follow-up question that that comes to mind is that is DGCA treating it as an aircraft accident? In fact, if that is the case, then the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau would also have to be would also come into the picture, and then an investigation would begin, because the whole turbulence incident was quite as you can see in the visuals also, it was quite a horrific incident, and now the passengers are still facing that sort of mental trauma post that incident. And given the fact that the whole turbulence and the decision making of the pilots have been put into question, the questions have mounted over their conduct, given the fact that some of the passengers have gone on record to say that passengers did not pay attention to the request of diverting to a nearby airport because they were severely injured. In fact, the pilots insisted that let's go to Delhi, you'll get better treatment out there, and pilots at times also asking passengers passengers and others to not shoot a video of the whole incident, of the aftermath of the the turbulence, and that which would something which in their words would bring disrepute to the airline as well as to them, is something is some of the words that have been attributed by passengers to the pilots as well there. So that all of that is being investigated by the DGCA to see if there was a deliberate act by the pilots to underplay the whole incident in order to save face for the airline as well as for themselves as well. So all of that is being investigated now by DGCA.
Right. Atul, there are also reports flowing around that there is, a likelihood, or there's been a leakage of report that the pilot may have been under the influence. What do we know about that?
Well, yes, that is a report that earlier we broke in the morning itself at 8 a.m. around when we learned that some of the tests that were samples that were collected from both the pilots, at least the stand-in pilot or the captain, that particular test of the dope test had come positive. The reports had come positive. However, Air India, in fact, when we reached out to Air India did confirm that test samples were taken indeed of both the pilots in question, but the Air India did not confirm, or in fact neither it denied reports of the test coming out positive. So that was an interesting line of a statement that Air India issued to the press, where they did admit that the samples have indeed been collected, as it is often done in such incidents, post such incidents, but it did not really sort of admit about admit the results that were being speculated around, or neither it chose to deny those results, claiming that while samples were indeed taken, Air India does not have access to the results of those tests. That is what Air India claimed in the morning. Now it will be interesting to see what does Air India say, because the statement from Air India, second round of statement, is something which is awaited, given the fact that the aviation regulatory body in the country, DGCA, has...
All right, Atul, appreciate